whiteboard for today. Okay. If you log into Moodle, you can find our classroom Moodle page. From here, you can download your own copy of the syllabus. You can also download just some frequently asked questions. Things like, what things do you need to bring, where to find the bathroom, those things are in the FAQ file. For these next coming weeks, we're going to be working on Project 1. This is going to be a letterhead design. Now, if you do miss a class, it steps through how to create this letterhead design in InDesign using your book. So you can always catch up using the book if you miss something or if we need to pace through it. But when I set the due date for it, right now I've got the due date not set. I want to see how fast y'all can work and how well you can pick up these things. When I set a due date, that's the due date it needs to be. There's going to be 8 projects in this book, and so and there's 15 weeks in the course. So it's going to be about 2 weeks per project that we're going to work on. Hopefully by this time next week we'll have finished up this first project in InDesign. To download the project files, it's these little funny looking files at the bottom of each project Moodle heading. So the ID RF5 Project 1, they're all zipped together. So all the files you're going to need are in one zip file. When you click on it, hopefully it'll work today. Let's see. It may take just a little bit to download it. Come on, there we go. It'll ask where do you want to save it to, and it's going to open it up with the archive utility. This will unzip the files. I'll just say OK. And it's going to download it, hopefully to your downloads folder, which is in the bottom of your dock. Yeah, looks like I've done this a couple of times. So here's the project file. The file that is open is called Crowe, C-R-O-W-E. And it's going to have a variety of photographs that are inside of this particular file. You're going to be creating a letterhead for a photographer. One thing I like about these books are they kind of give you some real-world projects. So if someone was going to hire you, they're going to hire you as a graphic designer to make something like a letterhead. And they want it to look a little bit better than just, I don't know, just a boring, simple little letterhead that you've worked from as well. And you can read about the project once we get the book. We'll get into that. So that's the way you can download all the project files and save them to your computer. Do y'all have a jump drive with you? Okay, that's another thing that you're going to need. Get yourself a jump drive to save all of your files to. If you don't have a jump drive, you can make a folder on the desktop by holding Control and clicking, create a new folder. Put your name on that folder. So I would say Ben Ivy. Actually, I've already got one that says this, but put your name and put Do Not Erase on top of it. One thing I'm going to tell all of our student workers to do is to clean off the desktops. If you save something to the desktop or to a folder and it doesn't have your name on it, you're likely to lose that file altogether. So save stuff to your jump drive. If you don't have your jump drive today, make a folder on it and say Do Not Erase. Everybody cool with that? All right. I'm going to go ahead and trash that. By the way, we will have this Mac Lab open on Sunday nights and probably Thursday nights. Hopefully we can get it open this Sunday. So if you need to work after hours, you can't get enough time in class, you can always come later and be able to work on it outside of class, usually from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock. All right, let's actually jump in and learn something for today. To open up InDesign, it's the purple icon down at the dock. It's got ID on it. We're using version CS5. There's a newer version that came out a couple of months ago, CS6, which is the newest thing. But when you click on it, this is what it'll open up. And if you've ever worked in any Adobe software, they all kind of look the same. The first thing you're going to see is a window in the middle of it that allow you to create new documents. You can also open up any old documents. You can see someone's been working on another InDesign document over here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new document to give you the brief tour of InDesign. So I'm going to create a new document. You can create whole books or a collection of documents, and you can create an entire collection of books, which is would be your library. So if you are working on an extensive project, these two really do come in handy. But we're going to make a new document. I'll come back to making this later. I'll just say OK. When you create a new document in InDesign, the first thing you're going to see is this is your work area. This is the actual page that you're going to work on. When you create things like add pictures, add text, add different line artwork and stuff, anything that you want to print has to be on this page. Now you can make stuff and put it off to the side. This is called your work area or your work board, but it's not going to print if it's outside of this black bounded area. This is your main printing page, and for now it's just set up like a regular sheet of paper. All of the tools that we'll need to be using and learning about are usually found in this far left hand side. This is your toolbox. As with any of the little palettes and boxes, you can click the top area and move it around. Actually, if you double click it, you can get it to go horizontal, or you can get it to go 2-column, whatever your preference is. I usually like to just keep it over here to the side, and so I can select any of the tools that I need within our toolbox. Another thing, if you'll hover over the tool, you can see the name of the tool. So you can see the one with the T, this is your type tool. Let's see, there's your line tool, different things like that. We'll go into what each of them do in a couple of lessons. We'll actually get into one of them today. You'll notice at the very end of the name of the tool, there's usually a letter in parentheses. This is called your keyboard shortcut. If you'll type that letter on the keyboard, it'll automatically select that tool. So let's say I wanted to automatically select my type tool. I can type the letter, in this case it'll be the letter T, and it'll automatically highlight and select that letter. Let's see what another one was. For the gradient swatch tool, it's the letter G, type G, and it'll automatically pop up that way. Why is it important to know your keyboard shortcuts, do you think? Work faster, yeah. If they're going to hire you as a graphic designer, you're on the clock by the hour. So the faster you can work, the more valuable you're going to be to an employer, someone who's going to hire you. So just little things like knowing keyboard shortcuts will help you out tremendously. And some of the more common ones you'll learn very quickly. For instance, the type tool, the move tool, those things. Next thing I want you to notice, at the very top of your screen, going along the top edge, this is called your control panel. Sometimes I'll call this your options panel, but that's just the way what I call it. But this is called the control panel. Whenever you select a tool, these tools have more options, and this panel will give you control over that tool. So that's why it's called the control panel. So sometimes they'll have different options. So in this case, watch what happens when I choose the type tool. Type tool comes up. Notice I've got a whole myriad of different types of options to choose from, and that allows me to edit the text. So depending on the tool you use, will give you different types of options that you can choose from. Also up at the very, very top, these are your drop-down menus. Just like any other program that you're going to work with, sometimes you'll need more controls, and these menus are where you can go to find specific things you can do within a document. On the far right-hand side, you got your palettes. These palettes allow you to control more things within InDesign that you're working on, and each palette has something specific. If you'll click on the name of it, it'll pop out, and in this case the pages palette allows you to add more pages to your document. Right now you can see we only got one page to it. So if I wanted to quickly add more pages to it, I can easily click an icon found in this document, and now you can see I've added more pages to this one document that I've created. All of these palettes on to the side, if you click on them, you can see it'll pop open. Just like the toolbox, you can move it around, place it wherever you want it to go. If you want to pull one out, let's say I wanted my pages always open, I can click on the name of it, drag it out, and now when I double click, I can have it open always, and I don't have to worry about clicking and changing it up from there. Some of the palettes won't be active because they can only be active at certain times, and that's kind of it's kind of hard to explain, and once we get into it, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's more palettes on the right-hand side than are being displayed right now. If you want to find more palettes, go up to the Window drop-down menu, and everything that's listed here, these are all the palettes that are found within the software. If it's got a check mark beside it, that means that palette is open. So if I wanted my control panel palette, if I clicked on it again, I'm going to close it out. So you can see there's my control panel, it's gone. Let's bring it back. So I'm going to click Window, Control, bring it forward. If you see one that has an arrow, that means there's some more palettes that are kind of associated with each other. So if I wanted to open up my notes palette, there's my notes. They're all docked down here as well. I can move them off to the side. Sometimes you can see the name of them behind there. There are several palettes that are kind of docked together as well that you can choose and click between those that we're working on. Main thing I want you to get for now is that if I ask you to open a palette, this is generally where you're going to look to it. And if you don't see it over here, go up to your window and try to find it in this drop-down menu from here. Oh, also, let's see. If I wanted to say return my pages back up here, I'm going to click on the name of it. You can see how it gets highlighted when I place it. So I'm going to drag it. Now my pages is back up in this menu as well. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Like I said, this is just going to be a general overview of what you can do and how you can do it from here. For today, the first part of this lesson is going to get you to set up a new document. And then we're going to get into some of the basic drawing tools within Adobe InDesign. The first thing you're going to do, I'll go ahead and at least show it to you since once you get into your document. If you want to turn with me, Mario, to page 23. This is going to be the letterhead that you create. The letterhead is going to have two different parts to it. At the very bottom, you're going to create kind of a film strip looking thing. The person that you're making this for, she's a photographer, so she wants to show off some of her photographs. And at the very top, she's going to give you her logo and her contact information. So this is what you're going to have to create, and the book's going to step you through that. Right now, if you want, go ahead and quit out of that. I'll let you go get your book. You can come back if you have it and work on it with us as well, okay? But for now, we'll let you go and get your book. We're going to dive in and actually work on the document itself. I'm going to quit. Huh? Oh, the cover of it? Adobe InDesign Professional Portfolio. If you tell them what class you're in, they'll be able to point it directly to there, okay? All right. Okay, Mario. Since you're prepared, we'll continue on too. I'm going to hit Don't Save, and we'll kind of step through these first couple parts of it to get you working with it. The first thing it's going to ask you to do is just to download the project files and unzip the file. We're actually not going to use anything today for what they're looking for. When you launch Adobe InDesign, let's see. It's going to ask you to create a new document. There's actually two places you can go to create a new document. First one that I showed you on your screen, you can click Document from here. If for some reason you don't have this document dialog box, you can always go to File, down to New, and choose Document from there, and it'll do the same thing. Whenever you open up or you want to create a document in InDesign, the first thing you got to do is define the size of the page that you're working on. That's the most important thing because each of the pages should be consistent that you're going to work with. For this one, I'm going to kind of quickly go through and see what we got. It's going to be letter sized, and we're only going to be working on one page, a one-page document that we're going to work on. So these first options, first of all, InDesign can actually create some web content as well. So you need to choose your intent, whether it's going to be printed or it's going to be web. So those are two different options. For now, we're just going to keep it at print. You're going to say the number of pages that you want to work through. And so for this document, we're going to keep it at 1. Facing pages, you'll notice it's checked off for now. Think of a book when you lay something out. So the pages are facing one another when you do a layout. And if you wanted to lay out a book, you want to make sure that what looks like on the screen is the way it's going to print off, right? Well, if you had facing pages checked, this is the way your document is going to set itself up. It's going to put each individual page side by side with one another. They're going to face each other as if it was being...
Print on one side, then on
Yep.
reverse and print
Yep,
on
and print on the other side, exactly. If you uncheck this box, when you create your documents, they're just going to create them one on top of the other. Kind of like, have you ever worked in Microsoft Word and it flows one page to the other? That's the way it's going to do if you unchecked facing pages box. And that's all that does.
Does the intent color could change or not? It changes colors like CMYK? Like
It does. Yes, it does. If you have your intent set to print, it's going to be CMYK. If you got web, it's going to be RGB type colors as well. Very good. Question. Do you remember from Design 1 what the left page and right page was called?
Versa and Recto.
Verso and Recto. Very good. I'm glad you remembered that. I taught somebody something. So okay. All right. You're going to set up your page. InDesign has a couple of predefined page sizes, and you can click on it. By default, letter size is the most common, but you can click on this, and there's some different type of sizes as well. You even have some European standards that are in here. These down at the very bottom, these would be your web sizes. So if you were making a web page or making something for an application, that's what this is. Yeah, different resolutions, those type of things. If you wanted to type in a custom size, you can always type it in right here, and it will come up. You can even type in something in like a different different measurement format. So say I wanted something that was 22 millimeters wide. So I typed in 22 mm. When I click the next one, it'll automatically convert it to inches as well. Let's take that back to 8.5. Here's where you can adjust your orientation, whether it's up and down or left to right. For now, we're not going to worry about columns, but if you need to set up a multiple column document, like a newspaper is divided up into different columns, this is how you could do it this way. One thing it will ask you to do is to set up your margins for your pages that you're working with. Margins are just a great way of keeping everything consistent within your document. You want to make sure everything falls within those things. So to set these up, let's see, I want to do it correctly. Each one is going to be slightly different. So you got your top and your bottom, and your inside and outside. Actually, let me uncheck that. Your left and right side of this. Notice that when I selected facing pages, you've got inside and outside as your margins. But if I uncheck it, you got left and right on there. Why do you think that is?
Because of the inside of the page.
Yeah, you've got the spine side of it.
Are they going to be different every time when you're dealing with a book? Or?
For a book, you generally want to keep them as consistent as possible. So once you set them, every page will be exactly the same.
But the inside is going to be different than the
Yeah.
outside one?
Generally, yeah. The reason why is if, let's say you wanted to have a book that you put holes in it, you would want to have more space for the spine or to give it a little bit more breathing room than you would for this edge right here as well. Okay? But that's what that is. For this one, we're going to uncheck it, so we're just going to worry about the left and the right. Watch what happens when I try to type in a margin, say the top margin. In this case, the top margin is going to be, okay, it's going to be 1 1/4 inch. If I was just to type 1.25, and then I click or I tab down to the next one, it automatically fills it in for the rest of them. The reason why is because of this little icon in the center. This little link means it's going to link up and it's going to make each one of them exactly the same. If I uncheck it, now I can go through and retype something different within each of the fields. And if we follow along in the book, it's going to ask you to do the bottom fields be at 2 inches, and the left and right fields are going to be 1 inch apiece. There you go. You got it? Fantastic. Is your computer still on? Yeah, you still seeing me?
What page you said it was?
We're on page 27 right now. I'm just kind of going through setting up different documents. The last thing that we're going to type in is the bleed and the slug. Do you remember what bleed and slug is from your graphic design 1? You don't remember? You remember, Maria?
Was it? I can't remember.
The margins would be the inside lines of your page. The bleed is if you wanted something to be printed all the way to the edge of your paper. Most printers can't print to the edge of a page. So what they do is they'll print on a larger piece of paper and then they'll trim it down to size. And so the bleed is that extra bit that's going to be trimmed off for a document that needs to print all the way to the edge. And so when you set up the bleed on your document, what you're doing is you're setting up that outside edge. This is that little bit that's going to be trimmed off in the end. Once we set it up, I'll show you exactly what that'll look like inside here. In our case, the bleed edge is going to be 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125. Here's that icon again. If it's checked off, whenever I click on this one, it'll automatically fill in the rest of those as well. Do y'all remember what the slug was? I gotta go back and reteach all this again. Another thing, I wish I had a good example to show you, but when you send something to a printer, the printer has to put their own information on it, like what page number it is or what the colors are for that they're printing. The slug is that little bit of space on the printing page that where they can put that type of information. In this case, we're just going to keep it at 0 for now, but that's the difference. The bleed and the slug are two things. They're going to be trimmed off anyway, but you got to be able to compensate for it once it's designed. I'm going to hit OK. So now we've got our design that's set up. You can see the black line, this is the actual size of the page that we're working on. So that's the 8.5 by 11. The pink lines, these are your inner margins. Since each one were slightly different, so the top one is 1 1/4, the left and right is 1 inch. The bottom one is 2 inches in length from the bottom. And so when you set it up, this is the inner margins, and these won't print once you send these to a printer. They're there just for your visual reference. The red lines on the outside, there's your bleed edge. So when you create something on InDesign, and you say you want to have a box, let me grab a text box real quick, just a black picture. If I wanted to print, say, a black box that goes all the way across my document, that looks like this. I'll turn off the guides and everything. Well, if I sent that to a printer and I got the printer, remember they're going to cut this down, that chances are that printer is going to move the paper just a little bit. And so when they cut it, you're going to see a white border or white edge to it. So as a graphic designer, you got to know to make your document slightly bigger. I'm going to make that document a little bit bigger. I'm going to bring back up my bleed guides. Bring it all the way out to the edges of your bleed. And so now when you send this to the printer, it'll have a little bit extra room for them to print on. And when they cut that, they don't have to cut it perfectly, but you'll know that your black box or whatever artwork that you have will be printed off and cut off perfectly that way. Does that make sense? Okay. If I'm going too fast for you, you let me know, and we'll back up from there. So that was just a free demonstration for you. Let's see. Let's turn back on my guides. The first thing it's going to ask you to do is, once you create the document, you need to be able to save it. As soon as you make a file, automatically save it and give it a name, and make it a good routine. If you're going to work on a computer file, to save every so often, every 5 to 10 minutes. These computers will crash, and if they crash, you've lost your file. So to save something, you can always go to File and Save. In this case, I'm going to go to, Save. There it is. Find your file, whether it's your jump drive or the file that you saved on the desktop. So I'm going to say Ben Ivy, do not erase. And we're going to call this one Identity. The .indd, that's the extension for an InDesign file. And the format we're saving it is just going to be CS5. I'm going to hit Save. And so now you can see the name of it will appear at the top of it. And so all I have to do is go to File and Save, or hit Command S every time I make a change, and that'll automatically save it from there. I will let you guys know, this computer lab, we're using version CS5. The computer lab in Avon, if you go over there to work, they're using version CS6. It's a newer version. Both of the versions of InDesign are not cross-compatible. So if you make something in here, you'll be able to open it up over there. But if you make something over there, you won't be able to open it up in here. Okay? So keep that in mind. If you are working on something, try to work either in this lab or try to print it if you need it. If you can't print it in here, print it off over there. But don't create something in there and then bring it in here. You won't be able to open it up. Do y'all have InDesign on your personal computers or at home? Anything? Oh, okay. So you'll definitely benefit from having the Mac lab open.
I've been trying to get one of those, but they're very expensive.
They are expensive. Some of the Windows computers that they have now are pretty good. Like their processors are good, and they're a lot cheaper than getting a Mac computer. So if you want to invest in a Windows computer, you can. I recommend that as well.
They have InDesign for Windows?
They do, yeah. When you purchase it, just make sure it's the Windows version of it, and yeah, you get InDesign for it.
I already have a HP.
Okay. See it.
Windows 7, so
How old is it? Is it a 2000?
4 years ago.
Okay, not too bad. You may be able to find the software for it. It'll be a little bit cheaper if you want to go that route. Okay, but back to the text. Let's say it's about 1 o'clock. What I'll do is I'm going to quickly show you some of the drawing tools that you'll go through in setting up. I'm going to skip over pages 30 and 31. What they're going to do is to show you how to set up your own margins. To do that, I'm going to do it real quickly. Notice that you got a ruler at the top and the far left-hand side. You can click and drag. Whoop, accidentally undid it. Let's see. Click and drag, and you got a line that will come up. It's going to ask you to create a margin. When I let go of my mouse, you've got a blue line now. And this is going to help you set up your different margins. I'm going to quickly drag some through here. Y'all just remember to go through the exact text in the book once it's set up to get the exact measurements. I'm going quickly to give y'all time to work on this as well. The first thing you're going to do once you create it is to start creating actual text, picture boxes to work within. Okay. So the first tool we're going to be learning is the rectangular picture box. This picture box, you'll notice if you'll hover your mouse over the tools. Right now I've got an ellipse tool. There's a small, I'd say a black arrow at the bottom right hand side of this tool. If you'll click and hold, there's some more tools you can choose from. There's a rectangle, an ellipse, and a polygon. We're going to use the rectangle tool for now. To create a rectangle in Illustrator, all you have to do is click and drag, and you've created a rectangle that way. As simple as that. When you do create a rectangle and you need to move it around, use your black arrow. This is your selection tool. Notice that V is the quick way of selecting it. So with your black tool selected, your black arrow, you can move it around, make selections. You'll also notice that there's some little dots at the corners and the sides of each of the objects that you'll be creating in InDesign. These are called your bounding box. With these, you can click on any of these points and reshape or resize the object that you created. If you'll move your mouse slightly outside of it, notice that the cursor changes. So I've got like a little arrow here. This gives you a rounded arrow. You can click and drag and adjust the rotation of that object as well. Let's bring it back down to where it should. Also, look at my mouse whenever I move it. You get a number that's out to the right-hand side of it, so you can say exactly what the angle you're changing it up to be should be at. So if I wanted to bring it back down to 0, I've got it. Same way if I click and drag to resize it. You get a width and a height measurement, which is a great way to quickly create a specific size document in itself. What it's going to ask you to do is, if you look in the example, you're going to create that black strip that's down at the bottom that will become the film strip. So I'm going to move it slightly down to the bottom to work from. We're actually going to bring it and drag it off to here. Another thing you can do, if you need it to be a specific size, in this case it's going to ask you to put it in a specific place and make it a specific size. If you'll look at the very top left-hand side of your screen in your control panel. With this one selected, the X and Y, this is going to be your coordinates that you're going to set it to. So we're going to set our X and Y coordinates. Let's see, I'm on the right spot. The X field is going to be -25. So it's actually going to be, you see a ruler, it's going to go back 1/4 of an inch. So X would be -0.25. And the Y field is going to be 9.5. Uh-oh, looks like I'm off by a little bit. I know why it is. I went too fast. Let me back up again. Whenever you created an object, this is also very, very important. At the very, very top far left-hand side, you'll notice there's a series of dots, and these are your reference points to where the X and Y coordinates are. Which one do you notice is highlighted? The middle one. The middle point, when I typed in 0.25 and 9.5, the middle of my document, or my little object that I created, that's where it's referenced at. I'm going to select this top left-hand side one. Now I'm going to type in -0.25. and 9.5 from my X and Y coordinates. And you can see it's going to plop it exactly where it should be from here. So my mistake, but make sure you know what your reference point is, and that's where you can choose it at the very top right hand side. To give it a specific size, in this case it's going to have to be 9 inches wide and 1.2 inches tall. So here's your width and here's your height. I'm going to adjust my width of it instead of 8 3/4, so 9 inches wide, and my height 1.2, and hit return. And so now I can get it the exact dimensions that I need from there. Any questions about creating it, changing it up? Everybody good? All right, to move on. Next thing we're going to do is to create some more rectangles. In this case, it's going to be the little holes that are found within the film itself. What I want to do is I want to zoom down so I can see this particular area. If you ever need to do that, there's a tool that will allow you to do that, and that's the zoom tool. It looks like a magnifying glass. I'm going to click it and then highlight the area that I want to zoom into. And so that'll bring that up, and so we can see and work with it really well. So I'm on page 38. We're going to start creating some smaller boxes. In this case, I'm going to choose my rectangle again. I'm going to draw a rectangle out to right here. Let's see. Actually, and I'm going to set my width of it to be 1/8 of an inch and the height of it to be 0.08. So where do I go to change the width and the height? Test y'all, see if you're awake. Top corner, very good. So the width of it, 0.125, and the height of it, 0.08. Hit return. Very, very small, teeny thing. Another thing it's going to want me to do is to change its color from black to white. Now this is kind of a confusing thing, but it's actually really easy to do once you know where to go. You can change your colors 2 different places. First thing you can do is, here's your fill color swatch at the very bottom of your toolbox. If you double click on it, it'll bring up your color picker. And from here you can choose just about any color you can imagine. Sometimes it's a little difficult, but that's how you create white. You'll select it from the main color picker and then choose your intensity on this side. And in this case, that's how you would choose white there as well. We'll say OK. Notice that it changed the color of my, my rectangle. Another place, and this will be a little bit easier, if you look up in your control panel, and the very center, this swatch right here is also your fill color. If you'll click on the arrow, these are some predefined swatches of color that you can choose from. Here's paper. Paper is actually is white also, since the majority of the things you're going to print on is white. They just call it paper. So if you chose that, that'd be another quick way of choosing the color white to work on. Also, there's an entire palette devoted to the different swatches, which gives you the exact same thing. There's also a color palette, which allows you to change up different colors, but for now, we're going to keep it at white. Let's see, to make it visible, I'm going to choose my Move tool, the Selection tool again. Let's move it down onto the black background so I can actually see it. Another thing I want to do, if I wanted to zoom in quickly, here's a keyboard shortcut. It's good to know. If you'll hit Command and the plus sign, y'all know where the Command key is on your keyboard? It's right next to your space bar. Command and the plus sign will zoom in where you're at. And I'm just going to, whoa, going too fast. Going to scroll back over. There it is. So now I can see what I'm working on and how I'm working. So let's continue working with these little dots by themselves. In your book, if you're on page 40, we're going to add a roundedness, little rounded corners to the box that we just created. So I'm going to select it. If you want to create rounded corners for it, I'm going to zoom in so we can actually see it. Look back up in your control panel. This area right here adjusts the corners that you're going to be working with. And by default, it's going to give you square corners. If you want to change up the style of it, click on this drop-down menu. And you can see these are some different types of edges to choose from. There's fancy, there's bevel. Here's the rounded one that's going to ask you to do. When I select it, now look at my circle. The corners of them are automatically rounded. No matter what size I make it, you can see it's going to keep them rounded based on that size. If you ever need to undo, just like any other thing, you can go to Edit and Undo, and it'll back it up one and we'll put it back to that size. Let's look at some of the other different types of bevels that they have. Fancy bevel, which will actually go straight. Yep, it'll keep it open like that. Let me undo. Scroll back up. There's an inner bevel, so it'll, instead of going rounded one way, it'll go rounded inversely. Inset. Of course, it's too small, you won't be able to see anything. Let's keep it at rounded for now, because that's what the book is going to be calling for. Again, if you need to change up the roundedness, that's found at the very top center of your screen in your control panel. Once you start creating objects, the next thing it's going to show you how to do is to make multiple copies of that object. A good, quick, and easy way of doing it, once you create something, you can always go to Edit and choose Copy. Notice that the hotkey for this one is Command-C. And then you can go back up to Edit and paste a copy of it into there as well. When I drag it, watch the little lines appear on my screen. These are little smart guides. These guides are going to help you line up different things. So when you drag something and the lines come up, you'll know that they're perfectly in line with one another. No matter where I move it, they'll automatically snap and keep everything in line. So these are really good to have once you're working on something. I want to show you the quick way of making a copy of something. Let's say I wanted to make another copy of this. I've got my Move tool, my selection tool, the black arrow. Hold down the Option key on your keyboard. When you click, notice, watch my icon. I've got my icon, it's just a black arrow. Hold down the Option key, you've got a black and white arrow. Now when I click and drag, it's going to automatically make another copy of it. So that's just a great way, rather than having to go to Edit, Copy, and Paste, hold down your Option key, click, and drag, and it'll automatically space it out and make a copy of that from there. It's a great little quick reference to work with as well. Also, I don't know if you noticed that, whenever I made that copy, it automatically jumped a specific distance. Notice it's going from there to there. The computer remembers the distance that you make from one object to another. So it's a great way of quickly making something. So if I wanted to make, say, let's drag one down, all of them be the same distance, I can do the same thing for this one, and it'll automatically jump to that size as well. Any questions about making the copies of it? Let's see, we're almost to page 48, and I'll take a pit stop and let y'all work from there. So what we're going to do is we need to make a copy of each of these little dots all the way across the edge of our page, and they're very, very, very small, and you're going to have to make several of them. So I'm going to select all 4 of these, and to do that I can hold down my Shift key and click on them. I'm just going to drag them off to this side. It's going to show you in the book a method of doing copying and paste, or called step and repeat. So I'm going to go to, let's go make a copy of it. So I'm going to hold down my Option, click and drag. There we go. If I wanted to do it again, you can go up to Object, go down to I'm sorry, I gotta have one selected first. So select an object, go to Object, Transform Again. Watch what happens when I do Transform Again. It'll make a copy of it for me again. So this is just another way of quickly making more and more copies. But here's an even better way. Since I've got to be able to fill up this entire line, I'm going to go to, excuse me, make sure I do this correctly, because if I don't, it's not going to work out. I'm going to go to Edit, down to Step and Repeat. Step and repeat allows me to repeat the same action over and over again for a specific number of times. In our case, I want to repeat this action another 45 times. So when I say OK, aha, notice now that it repeated that all the way across. It made a copy of the same thing over and over and over again, and actually did more than was necessary for me. So I'm going to highlight these and hit my Delete key and delete them away. So go into Edit, Step and Repeat. Once you've made a copy of something or transformed something, this is a great way of redoing something and repeating something over and over again. The next thing I'm going to do, and this will be the very last thing, is I need to make a copy of all of these and place them down at the very bottom. So I'm going to click and drag, highlight everything, Now notice that when I did that, I also picked up the black background. So if I wanted to deselect something, I can hold down my shift key. Uh-oh. Always going to jump for me. Hold down your shift key, click once. There we go. Now notice that my bounding box is only around those white area of the white rectangles that I created. So what do I hold if I want to make a copy of all of these? Option key. Click and drag. Let's bring it down to this particular size as well. I'm going to stop right there and let y'all jump in and actually work on this project. If you have any questions, you can ask me at this time so you can get caught up. Again, I'd like to be able to finish up this project by this time next week. So let's see. Yeah, it's only about 80 pages long. So we're on, if you can get through page 45, if you need to come in, I'll see if the Mac Labs will be open this weekend for you to be able to work on it as well. Don't forget to save it often, so I'm going to go to File and Save. And it's going to be saved within my, my folder that I created. All right.
This is pretty much